Welcome back everyone. I thought I would give you a different view of my living room today for your seated workout practice. So the intention behind this is to focus on the upper body, shoulders and the upper torso, but also add in a few little things that might just help it to become a more complete practice for those of you who want to use it instead of a mat work practice. So if you've been stuck at your computer working from home, haven't got time to perhaps get onto the mat for a full workout, this might be quite useful for you. Or if you're not so happy about getting up and down to the floor, then there's quite a lot of good ingredients in here to help you gain a little bit more movement and comfort in the upper body, and a little bit more focus on the core muscles as well. So we're going to start the practice with footwork. Probably a good idea if you have been doing a little bit of walking about, just generally got warmed up first, so I'll assume that you've done that. So you're going to need a tennis ball or a prickle ball, just a sort of small round ball for positioning the feet to start with. So start with some foot rolling. It's really good to pay attention to the sensation. It's tempting to kind of sort of do a little bit of sort of foot rolling the ball when you're sort of watching television or having a conversation, but if you can really pay attention to how the foot is responding to what's going on in the foot, to any tight spots or sore spots, any discomfort in the foot, then that's going to be beneficial to just understand what's going on in there. So apply the pressure particularly as you roll the ball back towards the heel. So you might want to sort of run along the inner arch and the outer arch onto the toes, but go with your instinct here, see what feels right. I'm going to swap feet. Obviously you might want to spend a little bit longer doing this. Remember that you can always stop the video and carry on with any of the exercises, so I'm giving you a sort of a little taster of each. So then placing the prickle ball in the little hollows between the ankles. It's quite far back actually, it's not resting on the knobbly part of the ankle bone itself. We can see that this helps us to find optimal alignment and keeping our arches lifted. So we're going to think about how we stand through the 3 points of the foot, through the big toe, the little toe and the front of the heel. And we're going to do some heel rises. So we are lifting the heels as high as we can, but without finding a pinch in the back of the Achilles. We're just really working that flex point in the foot. The toes themselves are staying on the floor, and the muscle work that you will feel is a strong activation of your calf. So this calf pump action helps to warm up all the muscles of the lower leg and the foot, and it's really useful to do some rises or some heel lifts here, sitting down, before you work anything more detailed with the feet. So once you feel you have done enough work there to warm up the calves and to find that motion, we're going to look at doming the foot. So sometimes people do find this difficult to locate. It's sort of retrieving an action in the foot that we sort of have a sense it should be there, but we sometimes can't find it and activate it. It helps to perhaps have a try to pick up a tissue or a handkerchief off the floor. Sometimes having something to actually try to grasp can help initially. The feeling is of drawing the carpet up underneath, so it's almost as though you're trying to pull the carpet through the foot towards the heel and achieve a lift that works both sides of the foot. So it is tempting to do it here, leaning into the little toe,
but we're trying to actually activate both sides of the foot. So you'll see that the knuckles of my foot are lifting. There is space underneath the foot like a little dome. I'm slightly exaggerating it so that it's visible on film. The toes are not scrunching, that's a sort of different action. So we're going to leave the toes. If we spread and open the toes to start with, as you go into the doming, you will notice that the toes close and draw together. So your feet may not respond in the same way if you have had an injury or you're carry weight differently over each foot. There may be differences. Just observe that. It may be that a foot that is a bit slower to respond needs a few extra practices on its own. So that's doming. Lifting your toes off the floor. Play the piano with your toes. Little toe, big toe, little toe, big toe. This does tend to drive people a bit nuts because it's quite tricky, but it's really good to try to articulate the foot and the toes and get some motion. So little toe, big toe, baby toe, big toe. Sometimes stiff big toe joints don't want to do this, but remember that the intention is everything. If you are thinking it, you're transferring that thought through the nervous system. You will be waking up movements even if they're not very visible yet. So now working a little bit more through the whole foot, a little bit as if we were jumping. And I know that for some people, pain in the joints, it is difficult to do running and jumping. So we can mimic this a little bit with the use of the foot in a safe seated position, or it might be useful for athletic people who've had an injury and need to restore lost mechanics. So we're going to take my right foot, we're going to lift, stretch, press and down, lift, stretch. So I'm now finding the movement of my ankle and then the movement in the forefoot. This is where your intrinsic muscles produce a strong sense of spring, so that instead of being a block or a brick, your whole foot has this spongy articulation, which in a chain through the calf and the legs into the hip provide us with that resilience when we are moving. So we've got lift, point, down, other foot, heel, lift, stretch the forefoot. Don't rush that, do some slowly. Lift, stretch, down, heel, forefoot, toes. And you might take it a little bit more as an articulated ripple, but each of the individual movements are still there. The heel, the ball and the toes. The heel, the ball and the toes. So now we can mimic stepping, springing, almost feel that the accent is up, so that gravity has this tendency to pull us down, resisting it and getting that feeling of lightness and spring. So up, 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 up. Give the feet a little shake and we're ready to move on to the rest of the set. So moving on, it's always a good idea before doing work with the upper body to have a look at your breathing, because if there is tension, restriction around this upper body, often because we've been sitting at a task or perhaps doing a repeated action like decorating or gardening, this can get quite tight. So we go to the breathing. It's useful to inhale for 5, exhale for 7, because we do need that slightly longer out breath. But just really feel the way that the air is taken right into the body, expanding widthways and deeper into that chest area. So lateral breathing, because it's quite easy to just breathe in the top of the chest. So for me, there's tighter sort of area around the thoracic,
breathing is always a good way of just loosening things off. So hands on the sides of the ribs. We're not using the hands to do anything. They're there to sense, to feel through a sense of touch, to feel what's going on underneath, inside. So we're inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Notice that your hands move further apart on the in-breath as the chest expands, and your hands, if you were watching yourself in a mirror, move closer together on the exhale. So I would pause the video and do a lot more on the breathing here to make that really work and create more comfort in the upper body. So last time, inhale and exhale. Noticing the lift, opening, widening of the chest on the inhale, the way that the breath moves down, so the tummy is relaxing on the inhale, and on the exhale, the closing, narrowing of the rib cage. So now placing the hands onto the tummy, we want to focus just a little bit on aligning the breathing rhythm with the activation of our deep abdominals. So whilst we're sitting, we may feel that we don't need a really strong connection with our core muscles. They're not working as hard as they would if we were doing a plank or a curl up, for example. But we still, for maintaining good awareness, good posture, we still need some activation, some awareness. So hands on the tummy, sort of the navel and below rather than up by the ribs. We're going to take a breath in through the nose. Notice the tummy will slightly push out into the hands, but we're not forcing that, we're just letting it do what it does naturally. Now on the out breath, imagine that you're doing up that sort of internal belt or corset, as if your internal belt was able to just pull a notch tighter. So the buckle would just not buckle up just a notch closer. Inhale, belly gets a little bigger. On the exhale, the navel will draw towards the spine, but it's a little bit more three-dimensional than that. There is a feeling of corset internally around that midsection of the body. So there's a feeling of contraction and sort of slight supportive tension. Inhale, a little bit like blowing up a balloon. As we exhale, there's that ability to move, to create a strong, pliable center. Inhale, exhale, draw the navel. There's no movement of the spine. My skeleton isn't moving. This is very much my deep abdominals just forming a strong, supportive corset around my spine. A little bit of body movement now, articulating the spine. So we're going to use the breath and take a seated cat curl. So we're going to inhale. On our exhale, we're going to focus on the energy in that abdominal midsection and use that musculature to begin to curl the spine. So it's very tempting to use the head and shoulders to try and create movement here. It's coming from lower down in that midsection. Inhale to return to sitting upright. On your next exhale, allow the ribs to move gently away from the pelvis, lifting the chest bone, opening the collarbones, allowing the shoulder blades to cascade down the back. Inhale, exhale, little curl. It's not going to be a big movement. We're sitting, we just want to get the muscles working the spine in a nice comfortable way that restores motion rather than trying to be too much of a stretch. So using those abdominals, softening the chest bone, feeling that scoop in the center but relaxed shoulders, lifting. You can use your hands slightly to press if you need a little more support for the extension. Inhale, exhale to curve.
Inhale, lift, elongate. And then very gently, not leaning back, just curving backwards, curving forwards. Side stretch. Various side stretches. I've chosen a side stretch that is very useful if it is your upper spine, your thoracic spine, that tends to get a little bit tight. So on this one we're not so much sort of focusing on the whole body as on the upper torso, and this relates well to the shoulder work that we're going to do in a moment. So I've got my right hand placed on my the right side of my ribs. Now if you can't flex the wrist to get that position, you could just use the back of your hand. Again, it's if it doesn't work for you to have a strong position, just use a gesture. It's still going to help with the intention. Other arm lifted in a curve above your head. If your shoulder doesn't allow you that range of motion, you could place your hand on your shoulder and feel the lift from your elbow. So here we sort of frame the head with the arm. So arm is going to be working with the body. The weight of the arm is going to help us to create a little more movement. So we're going to press the feet slightly into the floor. Breathe in. On our out breath, engage the deep abdominals, turn the head towards the right elbow, slight pressure in with the right hand on the ribs so that you will feel that this is working from the mid spine up towards the neck. Lift, come straight, breathe in. On the exhale, abdominals, turn the head. You'll need that out breath here. It's very hard, as you know, to bend a balloon that's been inflated, but as the air is coming out of the body, our movement is so much easier. So we inhale to prepare. Exhale, press the feet slightly, turn the head and curve. Keep the sit bones on the chair, but as you go through your sequence you may find that you do gain a little more movement. Certainly explore what's there, but don't push through the boundaries of what is comfortable. Better to repeat perfectly a movement that is going to really support our own anatomy, our strengths and weaknesses. Inhale, exhale, and bend. So I'm going to switch round. Left hand on the ribs, right hand up above, frame. Sometimes we need to just focus, gain our attention back for our second side so that the second side is as good as the first. Remember, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent, so the practice that we do needs to be as good as it possibly can be. Inhale, exhale, turn the head, lift and curl. Come up, inhale. There really isn't any space, time or room for additional thoughts. So this is mindful practice. We are concentrating on giving our body the best possible instruction, but then also reading the messages that our body provides for us as to the feel and condition of what's going on. Inhale and exhale. Use the abdominals gently to support the spine as you're moving. Lift. Sometimes we start to lose height, we start to lose energy, so summon that little bit more for your last one, and over you go. Come up and relax. So moving on to the shoulders and shoulder girdle, upper torso. First of all, just taking a little look at the neck and the head position. When we're on our electronic devices, laptops, iPads and so on, the chin can start to slide forward. So I want you to take your two fingers of your right hand and gently position the head so that the chin slides very slightly backwards. So the chin is parallel to the floor. We're not dropping it down, we're not lifting it. and just nudging really to achieve a lengthening through the back of the neck. When the chin juts forward, the back of the neck, the muscles on the back of the neck contract and tighten. That's often what causes discomfort. So just glide the head to the left, change the hand, glide. It's a bit like the owl, just turning the head. What we sometimes do is sort of compensate by lifting, tightening the shoulders. So don't try to go too far. What is there is what is there. It's an honest appraisal of the movement that we have. When the whole of the body is in good working order, when all the mechanics are good, they don't have to be perfect, but if they're as good as they can be, then there's going to be less strain on something like the neck. So just sense what room is there, and where you meet the resistance. So as you do the movement, you do become aware that the motion itself does become a little bit more comfortable. For me today, it's easier turning to the left than the right. So take a little appraisal of your own movement range as it is today. So there we are. Nodding, lifting the chin, just slightly drawing the chin in and back to feel the muscles on the front of the neck engage and the muscles on the back of the neck releasing. So onto the shoulders. Nice warm-up is to take the fingertips to the shoulders and to paint circles with your elbows. Now if you've got problems with your shoulders or you've had an injury and you know that this is a delicate area for you, don't try to do this too big. Focus on the elbows. Where are they going in the space? Because the pattern that the elbows design in the space is echoed with the circling motion in the shoulder joint itself. As you become more confident, then you can start to find more potential in there, bringing the elbows together. This upward motion is sometimes what gets restricted. We lose range. So elbows, if you have had an injury and you want to explore that singly, that's fine. Sometimes that's easier with the neck, so you can do that one at a time. It's okay to do one or two inward circles, but because we want to encourage that lifting up, opening out with the shoulders, finish on some outward circles. So once that feels warmed and comfortable, we go to shrugs. Make sure that your starting posture in your sitting pose here is good. So we need the chest, the rib cage lifted gently out of the waist without leaning backwards. We want width across the front of the chest, space between the shoulder blades, not pinching the shoulder blades together, and the feeling of the shoulder blades themselves cascading down the back. So we're going to inhale. I'm lifting the shoulders up to the ears and letting them drop. So inhale and sigh, and inhale, and it's very much letting gravity do the work so that the weight of the arms and the shoulders drop. It's a little bit like dropping a freshly ironed shirt onto the hanger. Drop the shoulders onto the frame of the rest of the body. So the rest of the body doesn't lose its shape. We're not collapsing in the midsection. It is just a contraction of those upper shoulder muscles, the upper trapezius, the levator scapulae, without using the pectoral muscles on the front of the chest. So very much a lift and drop. Taking a breath in, turn the palms to face the back of the room and breathe in. So on our out breath, lightly press the feet into the floor. Draw the deep abdominals in and reaching slightly down and slightly backwards. It's almost as though the palms of your hands make contact with the wall behind you. You might find that your fingertips just graze the chair legs. It's quite good to get that orientation. Breathe in, rotate the palms in. They can rotate even more if that helps you to get this feeling now into the lats, because this is lat pull. working the latissimus dorsi muscles. On the movement backwards, there is a slight feeling of extension here. So we are elongating all the way through the back line of the body. It may be that one side of your body is stronger than the other, so doing this in front of a mirror can sometimes help to show you where that might be happening. In breath to rotate, out breath. Just watch that the movement of the arms hasn't drawn the shoulders into a rounded forwards motion. We want to keep the collarbones open and the chest lifted and work this movement from here under the armpits. So coming into a position with the elbows flexed, we're going to think about the serratus anterior muscle now. And sometimes I do this with a small cushion tucked under the armpit. It is a sensation of drawing the upper arm and the elbow in, but even more, have a sense of holding postcards under the armpit. So if someone was standing behind you and trying to tug the postcards out to get hold of them, that your muscles here wouldn't let go. So relax, allow the elbows to move away slightly. On the out breath, draw the abdominals in without letting the elbows go too far back. Just draw the upper arm in towards the side of the body and feel the back part of your armpit, that underneath of the armpit and underneath the shoulder blades, activating. Release and squeeze. You can do this each arm at a time with a small pad or cushion. I find this works for me, just this feeling of squeezing sponges or postcards underneath the armpits so that the chest is wide. Now what we notice happening is that this opens the chest line. It draws the shoulders carefully over the top and down the back, and so counteracts that forwards and inwards pull that working on a computer or driving tends to encourage. So release on the out breath, feel that little squeeze. We're not doing anything with the forearm. So that's the cushion squeeze. So onto our arm openings, we're working the rotator cuff muscles. So the shoulder joint has a lot of available movement to allow us to do all our tasks, but it is easily damaged. So this exercise will help to protect your joint, allow you to move safely with your joint. So we're going to breathe in first, and on our out breath, keeping a snug position of the upper arm against the side of the body. It is a feeling almost of trying to show the inside of your elbow forward. So as we breathe out, we're drawing the abdominals in and opening the chest. I'm not tiring out those muscles between the shoulder blades. This is very much working in each individual shoulder joint itself. You could do some with the palms up. That additional rotation can sometimes help you to find a little bit more muscular movement in there. So we're widening. The inside of the elbow has an intention of moving slightly forwards. I turn my head very slightly as I do this movement because that makes it more comfortable for the neck, but you can just keep your gaze straight forward. So opening. It's worth stopping the video and doing a few more of these, but I'm going to show you how this exercise leads nicely into a wonderful upper torso release. If you're just feeling tired and stiff and that you've been stuck in a static position for too long, just doing this next release on its own may be all you need to revitalise. So palms down, elbows in. We're going to take a breath in. On the out breath, we go into our opening. On the in breath, we're going to float the arms up without letting the shoulders rise. On the out breath, we're going to feel that squeeze between the shoulder blades. So we're activating the rhomboids, which can get tight. Now then, on an in-breath, we're going to release, opening the chest, feeling that opening across the pecs, as if someone is pulling your fingers in through each corner of the room. Coming up, we're going to cross one elbow over the other.
and give yourself a hug. Take a breath in. On the out breath, focusing on your midsection, draw your abdominals in, drop your chest, let the head and the neck wilt so that everything folds gently into a curve, and we can feel the stretch running down the spine and across across the shoulder blades. Coming up, place the arms by your side. Take a breath in. On the out breath, little opening. On the in breath, float the arms up. On the out breath, squeeze. So we contract the muscles that we then want to release. Lift, open, come straight. Cross the other elbow on top of the bottom. And hold on to your shoulder blades or as much of your body as you can grasp. Drawing your navel in, let your chest sink downwards, let your elbows drop, let your head relax. Don't let tension creep into the neck, let it drop. Feel the curve, feel that gentle stretch and breath across the back. And come up. Finding our hip hinge, and this is what's going to allow us to go from sitting to standing. So we have worked our upper body, we have got our lovely strong agile shoulders, we've got a strong midsection that supports the spine. We're beginning now to feel how that sense of grounding through the floor with the feet, that connection through the back of the body, the back of the legs and the glutes is becoming really important. So I'm now going to give those glutes a really good squeeze. I'm going to come into a squat, and I change my mind and sit back down, and I'm coming up into a squat, I change my mind, and this is where all of your Pilates practice begins to show its benefit, because we have the strength to resist gravity, to go from sit to stand and up, fingertips reaching to the sky, feet into the floor, using that strength through the feet, the calves, the back of the legs, the glutes. We can come up into a rise. We can feel our balance, feel our strength, feel our length, and come back down. So thank you everybody. That was your seated workout, focusing on the upper body, but leading you into your standing. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and look forward to being back on our mats for the next home practice. So goodbye from Sam and goodbye from me.